Welcome to Beyond Digital Frontiers, the podcast that keeps you up to date with all the digital transformation of our planet. On this episode, we have the privilege to talk with an expert on digital business models. He has a PhD on brand management. He is also a consultant, a university professor, a researcher, and a speaker. Today is here with us Professor Uwe Schnetzer. Welcome to our podcast on innovation. Professor, thank you so much for being here today. So I would like to start with the first question. How would you define a digital business model, and what are the key components that differentiate it from traditional business model?
Well, a digital business model is a way a business is run based on the upsides that digitalization is offering. So, which is, among others, but in principle it is about replacing resources with information. So, for example, Spotify. You don't need a physical container of the music, but you have information that can be pretty much distributed via online or connected devices, so to say. So the resource or the physical medium is replaced by information. And with that, you have a lot of upsides. Basically, you have this idea of zero marginal costs. So it doesn't, if you stream one song to one person or to 1,000 people, it costs you no difference. So with that, this zero marginal cost operating is one of the major leverages towards the profitability of digital business models and hugely differentiates from them. For example, consultancy. You cannot leverage personal labor because it's naturally limited to 24 hours a day. There is not more. How many people you can serve with one data file that you send around is pretty much unlimited. So this is a huge leverage, and then you're basically independent of time and space, because you can stream, you can access digital things whenever you want, you can operate things whenever you want, from wherever you want. And in this combination, so it's just the major difference, or the major unique feature of digital business model.
What are some of the most innovative digital business models that you've seen emerge in the last few years?
In the last few years, well, I would say it's hard, because in this purest idea of a digital business model, nothing revolutionary new has evolved, because I think we have also reached a certain level of maturity that in the end only fosters incremental innovations. But a business model that I personally find, let's say, illustrative for the upsides of digital transformation or digitalization is these things like, and perhaps you've seen them, like Remarkable or what Moleskine is doing, that you have, let's say, handwritten notes. So Moleskine has the notebooks, so it's a book, which pretty much advertises by having handwritten notes, and they have this more, let's say, intellectually appealing way of creating notes, but they are obviously analog. And this is perhaps you also know that from class, how to pretty much make notes properly. On paper it's so easy, but it's not digital. Doing it with your iPad is always somehow tedious. And they have pretty much invented a certain pen that if you write that, this pen pretty much tracks your movements. So your handwriting is then digitized. So you have on the one hand the analog version in your book and a digital representation online.
Oh, nice. Didn't know about this. Cool.
And this is, you see, it's not revolutionizing the world, but I think it bridges nicely this gap between analog and digital world.
Okay. In your opinion, how has innovation been accelerated with the shift to digital business models? And do you think some of these changes are permanent?
I think digitalization, especially digital business models, have way lower entry thresholds or entry barriers, so you don't need much capital. In the end, you need a smart person being able to operate a computer. And with that, you can start a blog, you can start an online shop, you can be an influencer. It's easy. You just do what we're doing right now, holding a smartphone, recording something, and give it out to the world, look what's happening. So I think with that, innovation it's easier to access. You don't need innovation experts who are innovators to do stuff. Everybody can do that. So it's democratizing innovation. And with that, I think it's obviously faster, it's widespread. It's also, let's say, more of mediocre quality for sure. But I think this kind of, let's say, wave is kind of permanent. And on the other hand, we have this super duper highly specialized innovators that create the technologies that are currently shaping our future. AI is super high threshold because you really need to have a lot of expertise to understand what's going on. In fact, most people don't know what an AI is doing in per se. It's a black box. But they try. And I think also if you think about all this, let's say, stuff that happens in bioscience and so on. So on the one hand, we have more people being able to innovate on a basic level, and we have a way, let's say, higher demand in really developing breakthrough stuff. So it's, again, more or less dividing into some basic general movement and very, very high specific people doing that.
How do digital platforms like Amazon, Uber leverage their business model to disrupt traditional industries?
Well, I would put that question more into past tense because I don't see a lot of platforms appearing anymore.
Okay.
So I think this has been kind of a first or second wave of the internet economy in terms of that. Well, the idea of a platform is a very simple thing. You provide a marketplace where you pretty much bring together suppliers and clients. And with that, you charge from both. And so you get a nice amount of money without a lot of invest from your side. And the upside is obviously for suppliers, you have access to a lot of clients at the same time without the high acquisition costs that normally come with online business. On the other hand, from a client's or customer's perspective, you have a very broad assortment that you can choose from. Yeah, so Amazon, the Amazon marketplace delivers the most freaky, niche interest stuff that you could think of. And also Airbnb provides in the most remotest location, nicest accommodation. So this is exactly this long tail logic that was very, very early discussed, that we have a lot of long tail business with e-commerce. Because you can offer slow moving goods or rarely asked for products at a reasonable price, which the normal retailer wouldn't do because it's just stocking a shelf place and nobody buys it. However, a lot of suppliers have understood that it's a trap because as soon as the platform becomes too powerful, it changes the rules. So with that, I think a lot of suppliers are a little bit reluctant to follow on platforms. And the latest trend, at least here in Germany, is food delivery, so groceries delivery. And obviously doesn't take off. And I think with that, platform business is really, really matured, and I wouldn't see industries that will be disrupted, because if there were potential to disrupt them, they would already been disrupted. So I think the platform business model, I think, is understood, is explored, is exploited, and now we're looking for other things.
What role does data monetization play in digital business model?
That's a tricky one, because in theory, data is super valuable resource. In practice, nobody wants to pay for it. So I'm coming also from a lot of practical experience with data providers, and being a client to data providers and knowing my own willingness to pay for that, but also consulting data providers and trying to find reasonable marketing approaches that they can monetize their business. So in the end, data is, in the end, it's about the quality of data, because data is ubiquitous. You just have access to a lot of data for free. So good data, and good data is the question, what do you need? It's often in terms of being, valid. So does it help me? Availability and completeness. And if you can provide these kind of data, you have an asset, and with that you can first you actively monetize them as the wrap packages that you sell to clients. So this, I would say, is direct monetization, but this is only true, as I said, for complete and good data. But you have also indirect monetization effects, because data and availability of data allows you to better target your marketing approach in terms of product, promotional place, price, packages, if you want so. And things like dynamic pricing and so on, they obviously raise your revenue, but only if you have enough data at hand to do this properly.
How do digital business models differ across industries, such as finance, healthcare, and retail?
So we see media, retail, so let's say classical B2C businesses. I think or were firstly taken pretty much by digitalization, also where this idea of information replacing resources is quicker. So you see, there's a reason why we still have supermarkets, because you cannot replace an apple with information. You need that apple. Yeah? You also need that milk and so on. So the more B2B oriented, I mean, we see that digital transformation in the B2B sector is still the place where you can still create a lot of magic with some simple digital transformation tricks, because the business is often still very manufacturing heavy. Yeah, with that, it's more about process support than real exchange of information with resources. But you see, we have things like smart factory, like the digital twin. In the end, I think the metaverse will not be a consumer business. I think this will be more of a business-to-business place, but more in terms of having like virtual facilities or something like that. Yeah, so pretty much if we're looking for some kind of wave or pattern, it is B2C early, B2B late, B2C more impactful, B2B more supportive.
Could you talk about the role of artificial intelligence in shaping new business models?
Well, it's I think this is really status quo and work in progress, because currently it's just explored. I think nobody has a master plan how AI can create, disrupt, or whatever business model. I think from the simplest perspective is that you can use AI as some kind of sparring partner to validate business model ideas with this thing. You could obviously try out in how far AI serves as the core of your value generation. So being pretty much an AI-based business. How can it facilitate channels, your customer approach? So from a marketing perspective, things like chatbots and personalized email marketing, all this stuff. AI has an impact on your business model, but that, let's say, there's a kind of a business model generative AI. I wouldn't see that. I mean, theoretically, yes, but in practice, no.
What are the most common mistakes business make when transitioning from traditional business model to digital ones? And how can they avoid this?
This is the golden question. I think the biggest trap is, firstly, I think it's tough to switch between those things that made you successful in an analog world or in a product tangible world versus that in the digital world, and vice versa, because I don't think that we will have 100% digital world later on. So, I mean, think about agile development. Yeah? So it works super good for software, because you can update software, you can exactly think in this modular, step-by-step iteration of improving stuff. If you think about building bridges or planes, I'm strongly disadvised to do that, yeah, because these products need to be 100% perfect as soon as you deploy them. So seeing this existing gap between analog and digital things, this mental shift, I think, is a super tough one. I think digital transformation also has somehow cluttered with a lot of other stuff. So like new work, like, let's say, different understanding of your workplace, of different leadership expectations, because it pretty much just perhaps coincidentally aligns with each other. But I mean, all these ideas of new work and I don't know, strict leadership or whatever, they just don't have to do anything with digital transformation. It's just that a lot of digital companies did that, but it's not belonging together. So I think being not clear about what you actually want to do is also a huge trap. So yeah, and third, perhaps a good understanding of how your company best benefits from a certain degree of further digitization. So I think this is, in the end, in a nutshell, the necessary savviness and the necessary clarity about what you want to basically achieve, except for saying you are an AI-driven company or something like that. But what really you want to achieve with that, this degree of clarity is, I think, often not existing with that, just vague mess of not knowing what to do.
What role do cloud technologies play in streamlining digital business processes, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises looking to scale rapidly?
Well, they enable that in very simple terms. So this whole idea of cloud computing is that you don't need to have these resources on your own. And I think it's pretty much the same idea like 100 years before, that when we were talking about electrification of our world, well, you get either the choice of building your own power plant and maintaining it, or doing cloud powering by basically accessing power that is generated on a central place somewhere else. And this is pretty much our natural status of today, that we just use power from somewhere. So storage space, processing power from somewhere will be perhaps also a next status in 15 years from now. The major difference is that while power and accessing power from somewhere does not indicate what you're doing with that power, cloud computing does. And I think this whole topic of privacy and data security and data protection remains unsolved, is still unsolved despite all regulations and attempts. And so with that, there's still, or the more, let's say, the more impactful the company insights are, or around, the higher the risk that a leak of company secrets has a bad impact, the more you're inclined to still keep things on your own premises. And with that, as long as this question is not satisfyingly and reliably solved, cloud computing will not be as available as power, pretty much to stick to that analogy.
What is your perception of the business world future in the next 5 years regarding AI and digitalization?
Well, I think it will be kind of a rather linear progress. I think we were all surprised by ChatGPT and what it can do. But still, we have our work. Nobody has been laid off because of generative AI. So, and we all quickly understand the limits of it. Yes, it's just after a few attempts, you see, okay, it's nice to have that, but well, I start thinking on my own because the results will be better. So with that, I think it's more of, again, it's more like digital photography democratized the way that we take pictures. Before that, it was a skill, and you need to be a professional photographer with a lot of expensive equipment, a lot of experience to shoot excellent pictures. Today, most of us just hold their mobile phone somewhere, and a lot of software aid does that for us. It's just nice, we all have nice pictures. So in the end, generative AI enables us to also access a nicely written text, a nicely illustrated image to support our stuff. So with that, let's say the average of how presentations are made, the average how texts are written is just rising, and that's it. So this is how I would, let's say, in a most probable scenario, see that. If geopolitical tensions are rising to the extreme, it might be worth to just disconnect, because as soon as you go to the internet, you're just bombarded with viruses and cyber attacks. So it might be that we go totally to the opposite. Or the other extreme, but rather unlikely example is that we will, by chance, develop a super AI that takes over the world. But who knows? I would also not see that as likely, but I would not exclude it. Yeah, so with that, but you see, let's say, more from the reasonable probability perspective, I would just go for more normal adoption to what Gen AI can do right now.
How can people keep up to date with the digital trends and news? Is there any website or ways of information that you would suggest?
I would definitely not use social media because it's, well, too hyped and too much of attention grabbing than of delivering information. So in the end, it depends a bit on, let's say, the kind of information and the way that information is pretty much delivered. And well, for that, I would pretty much, first of all, recommend the existing reputed news sites that also keep constant updates here. Technology consultancies make sense, but I mean, it's always PR material, so you always need to subtract the marketing aspect of that stuff, which is also kind of tedious. Well, in the end, being aware that high quality news is of value. So in the end, pretty much recommend to pay for news. So basically buy a newspaper or subscribe to the service.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Professor. And thank you to our audience for listening today. And remember, in an ever-evolving digital world, the most transformative technology is kindness, and it's the only one that never goes out of style. Have a nice day.